Hey everyone, welcome to Zen and Tech, our weekly show focused on centering your inner geek and using technology to help you deal with the stresses of your connected life. I'm Rene, and the host of your show is Georgia. Before we begin, I just want to remind you that while Georgia is a therapist, she's not your therapist. Everything said or implied in this episode is for entertainment and informational purposes only, and shouldn't be taken in any way as a replacement for personal, professional care. Georgia, you're back!
I'm back. I'm back. Very excited to be back. I did miss this quite a lot.
So how are you doing? What's going on? What's new?
I've been sick, had family, and then just a lot of work. So just trying to, stay afloat.
My bad. I expressed an interest. I apologize. I thought I'd get one of those platitudes like, good. One of those things that...
Sorry, that was really good. Yeah, ow.
All right, so we are continuing, while Georgia recovers, we are continuing our series on parenting, which I must say I think is my favorite podcast series we've ever done.
I love doing it. I think it's really helpful. It's one of the few things that we are not taught to do. We're taught to drive a car. We're taught how to, run. We're taught how to ride a bike.
Yeah, and then we're given human life and just told to go off and learn on our own.
Exactly. So if I can help others, that's great. And I think that it's one of the most important jobs and most difficult jobs that we can ever do.
Now, we started off this series talking about setting boundaries, and then we spent another episode talking about dealing with your children and eating. And tonight you said you wanted to talk about, and bless you for this because we have so many people asking about it, children and sleep, which inevitably leads into parents and sleep, because seldom do sleepless children lay sleepless alone. Yeah,
it is one of the, sleeping and eating is one of the most difficult, sleeping, eating, and boundaries are one of the three most difficult situations that I deal with when I'm helping new parents or, parents with children, period. How to do this properly. There's a lot of errors that are made. There's a lot of guilt that's involved. And it's really hard for people to change their mode of doing things and look at things in a different light. So I thought that this would be one of the most important things after boundaries and how to eat is how to sleep. We spend 1/3 of our lives doing it. So it's an important habit.
Now, why is it so hard? Why don't babies just sleep? I don't want to get all Samuel Jackson about this, but why don't you just put them down and why don't they go to sleep?
Interestingly enough, some babies won't sleep because of colic. So that's a different story. And there are some things that you can deal with it for that. But there's other babies that are unfortunately trained improperly to sleep. There are some things that children need to know in order to gain good sleep habits. It's one of the most important things that we can do. It's the time when we go to sleep. It's when we form our memories. It's when we learn how to self-soothe ourselves.
It's when we take the cache from our brain and write it to disk.
Exactly. And without sleep, everyone's going to be anxious and cranky and upset. And that's the child and you.
And they pick up on your stress and your anxiety, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
Exactly. Exactly. And then they're not going to eat properly, and then they're not going to be able to behave properly, and then you're not sleeping as well.
So break down. So a child, how much should a child sleep? Because everyone worries, is my child sleeping enough? Is it sleeping too much? Is there a range?
It depends on the age of the child. At first, when the child is born, they sleep a lot of hours. So, if your child's sleeping 12, 16 hours, there's nothing wrong with that. At first you're like, oh, wow, I'm going to have so much time to do everything else. Well, no, because they're going to be hungry and they'll be having a lot of sleep, but they'll be waking up also a lot.
Yeah, so it's not a straight sleep. You're not getting 12 hours at a stretch.
There are some children that will do that, and all other parents hate them, but it's rare. So,
well, no, but in my experience, you kind of panic a little bit. You keep checking to make sure they're still with you because they're sleeping so much.
Yes, exactly. Are they alive? Yeah. Exactly. You do the little lick your finger and
is the chest going up and down? Is the chest going up and down?
Go back to sleep now. So that's what happens at the first. By the time that you have your third or fourth, that stops. They're okay.
Yeah.
Trust.
As long as you can, as long as you think they're in the house.
Right. So teaching your child bad habits, which happens often with parents that have young children, it will last a lifetime.
So there's a range of times they can sleep. You shouldn't worry if it's too much or too little within that reasonable. Well, how do you define good habits versus bad habits?
Well, I'm going to give something, and this is, there are differing ideas on one thing that I'm going to mention, and that is, as long as your child is not underweight and is eating properly when they are awake. My thought, again, in Canada right now, they say wake up your child every 4 hours to feed them. It's a new thing. They used to say just let them sleep. I disagree with that. I think that it teaches them a very bad habit. If I'm woken up and suddenly I'm fed, I'm not too pleased about that. I don't want to. So if your child...
We would consider that an attack. Like if you're an adult, you would consider that an attack.
I might actually beat them up. I think that I might have done that once. But anyways, that's a totally another story. So if they're sleeping, they're eating well, they're gaining weight properly, let them sleep. They're tired. They've gone through a lot. The world is a strange place for them. Allow them.
They did not ask to be here
during the time they're there. Yeah, exactly.
So
that's the first bad habit that we do, is not to let the child to over micromanage your little baby. They know what they're doing.
We interfere with their natural sleep cycles.
Right. Exactly. So that's the first bad habit. The second one, the one that's most important, is that we often don't allow our children to learn how to self-soothe themselves.
Okay, what do you mean by self-soothe?
Well, what happens when you go to sleep is that, you don't want to, when your baby is young, to constantly, and there's a book, and I'll put it down into the chat room and I'll mention it here, which is Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. And just let me write it down. And it's a fabulous book. Wait. Happy Child. There we go. So that book is wonderful in that it teaches you good moderation on how to teach your child to self-soothe themselves. Now, this only happens at a certain window, and you can do it. I did it, I think, at 9 weeks. And what you do is, when you put your baby to bed, one is that you monitor them. When do they get tired? When are they awake? And you put them into their crib or their little pram, wherever you have them sleeping, their little sleep area. You put them to bed awake, not asleep. You don't want them to have to be rocked to sleep, because if for 3-4 months of their life, they're learned that they rock to sleep, or even worse, nurse and fall asleep, then that's their new habit. They learn that that's the way to be soothed, is through another person, not empowering themselves and learning how to self-soothe, but learning that they need you to do that.
You're creating dependency.
You're creating dependency at that age. And I understand parents are like, yeah, but they need it. I enjoy it. Then I sleep.
That's such a lie. That parent is the one that, they're putting the parents' need in front of the child's.
It is unfortunately a little bit selfish. So even though I had my baby that slept with me during the night, but then at 9 weeks, and I knew, again, I didn't do it right with my first, but then at 9 weeks, I put them back and they went to bed in their own crib. Now, and so they would go to bed. You have to have them, monitor it. You want them to go to sleep really tired, but awake. Then you put them into the crib and you allow them to fall asleep on their own. And then you have to notice the difference between if they're hungry, if they're tired, and right away if they fuss, which some babies do, they're kind of like moving around, they're not comfortable, and they make these little kind of like crying sounds. It's not a feeding I'm crying. It's not I'm hurt I'm crying. It's not I'm scared I'm crying. But it's kind of like that fussing. You give them a little bit of moments to trust that they will figure out to get the better position what they're at and go back to sleep. And so that's another thing of how to soothe themselves and be calm in that situation.
So again, you're not micromanaging them. You're not being overly fussy with them in return.
Right. What you don't want to do is often we do things out of guilt. And for some reason for sleep, it's a little bit different than people feel. Like I always tell my parents is that you would not allow your child to run with scissors. You wouldn't, no matter how much they cried and wanted to run with scissors. I never have a parent coming to me and say, you know what, I have a really hard time. My child cries because they want to run with scissors and they're constantly running with scissors. I've never had a parent ever come to me with that. Children love to run with everything, but that is something we will put our foot down and say, no, that is not okay, because that's unsafe. Yet we will allow the child to cry and then we pick them up immediately and we are teaching them that they cannot take care of their own sleep habits It's us. They have to depend upon us, which unfortunately makes us feel really good because, oh, look at what a fabulous parent I am.
Oh, he needs me. I'm there for him or her.
Exactly. Which at a certain stage, now I deal a lot, and it's one of the hardest things to break out of the habit because of that guilt. And that's why the book helped me relieve of the guilt, that I'm teaching my child a very important goal, a very important skill on how to soothe themselves and be able to have a good night's rest, which is for their sanity, for their health, because we heal a lot, we form memories, and we heal a lot when we're asleep. 1 second, I might sneeze.
We'll add a sneeze in post.
Of course.
Bless you.
I'm back. Thank you. So that's one thing that's really hard for people to learn to, deal with the bond. So I end up with people that are 14, 15 years old and they still sleep with their parents and they cannot sleep on their own. I've actually had 25, 26-year-olds that still cannot sleep in their own bed.
Because they've never learned how, right?
They've never learned how. That's not okay. You are not doing a service to your child by making them dependent on you. That's selfish and cruel, because I end up with these children coming to me and they're embarrassed and they're sad and they're like 7 or 6 years old or 12 or 14, and they can't have a sleepover. They can't go to a family's house. And then if you decide to stay up later, they're devastated and hurt. And then maybe, everyone else is going away and they can't do it. And their friend invites them over to a sleepover and everyone's having a slumber party and they can't go. It isn't.
And it sounds absurd, but I mean, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and every day that you prolong it is another day towards the 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old.
Right. So I'm not saying that, and just because some people will see this part of the podcast, I'm going to get a whole bunch of hate mail, but my child has colic, but my child is in pain.
So let's say, like you did say colic. I've also heard that, sometimes they react to the food that the mother is eating. If there's certain foods, like sometimes milk or sometimes, there might be medical reasons too. You're not talking about those. No,
I'm not talking about those things. So if your child has, like, colic is often, and again, it's a misunderstood thing, but it's often gas pains. And if they're in a severe amount of distress, as I said, you have to understand, or if they're, they need to be changed. My one, it was fine. It didn't need to be changed. But if they have a severe amount of distress, that's a different story. You don't want your child to feel under a ton of distress and no one's there for them. That will cause them to have an attachment issue. Mm-hmm. Also, they will end up saying, you know what, I don't need anyone. No one will come when I cry, which is also something very, very sad. And the same thing with the child that needs to have their parents, say they're, 14 and they have to sleep in their bed. That's an attachment issue, which I'm not going to discuss too much, but that's an anxious, attached child. They're like, I need you. You're the only one that will soothe me. I don't believe in myself.
You don't want to smother them or abandon them.
Exactly. And then there's the other one where you're an avoidant, where they're like, you know what? No one will help me. No one will listen. And I can't trust anyone, which is also a different issue. Though for colic, if the mother is breastfeeding or if there's a different formula, you have to kind of check that there's something that is not dealing with their digestive system, because a child's digestive system is immature.
Yes. And it's also 90% of their existence. So it's important.
Right. But even for a child that's colicky, during the daytime, you can still sleep train them. When they don't have colic, when they haven't eaten, so if they haven't eaten for a good period of time, usually the colic gets better. And we'll deal with the eating for the mom of dealing with that, but you wait, a couple of days of changing your diet, different things are affected with that. So, you wait 2 days and then you put them to bed, again, awake when they are not in pain, and let them fall asleep on their own. It still teaches them, I'm, here and I can fall asleep. They may wake up because of pain, and then yes, definitely burp them, deal with them, and take care of them. But then again, really, really tired, you put them back. It is exhausting for both parents. I'm not saying that sleep training your child is easy, but the inverse of having them stay in the bed at a very long period of time, they become dependent on you. And unfortunately, selfishly, it feels really good for you too. Yeah. And you think you're getting a good night's sleep, but you're constantly thinking, where's the baby? Where are they doing this? I heard them move. You're not getting a good night's sleep either. It's not quality of sleep. You have to enter all of the sleep cycles in order to actually get good quality sleep.
So it's a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Exactly.
Now,
exactly.
I've also heard sometimes that there's bad dreams, or maybe with older children, night terrors. That's also a separate issue, right?
It's definitely a different issue, and it's something that you want to address. It depends on what type of terror. I haven't actually done an episode on dreams, but it's dependent on what type of dream. There's many, again, night terrors are exceptionally frightening. It's a child will wake up in bed, often screaming or crying. You want to also address that and be able to be there for them. But if they have, say, anxiety dreams, then you want to deal with what are the main emotions to them. There's angry dreams, there's anxiety dreams, there's happy dreams, there's dreams of becoming abandoned. It'll be the issues that child is dealing with during their own life.
Are there any other major areas to deal with? I mean, I want to get all that out of the way so you can focus on the part that you do actually have control over.
Right. It is so important that they have a place that is comfortable, is safe, and that you feel comfortable enough to let them go. So even if it is a place next to your bed that you place your child, then you want to slowly move them into a more and more independent area as you both feel comfortable. I think that often most of the issues that children have with sleeping are the issues of the parent, not truly the issues of the child. And so you have to check your own feelings of what is love? Am I loving them? But you want to make them independent. Our role as parents is to make our children independent, strong, and self-sufficient.
Are you doing it for you or for them?
Yeah. Though it's hard because that means that, they don't need you at a certain stage and you have to let them go. But that's your job. Your job is to let them go and hope that they can survive. And if they're not able to sleep, they're not going to be able to study. They're not going to be able to formulate thoughts. They're going to be much more anxious and much more angry. And in the end, that's going to affect their entire social, emotional, and physical ecosystem.
So this is really the sleep training sounds like it's really setting the foundation for long-term well-being, establishing a lot of habits that will serve them well throughout their lives.
Yes. I'm going to mention, some people talked about night terrors and sleepwalking, and they're a little bit different. Bedwetting is often about stress, so I'll mention that as well. So bedwetting. Bedwetting is often about stress. It's also a little bit about laziness, and it could be that their bladders are just immature, so they don't know when they are wetting the bed. So you have to figure out the difference between that, rule out if there's any physical reasons for that. So first, before you end up dealing with the psychology of it, if it often happens on a day of school or a day of a test, track that. Use your own journal by tracking down the days that there are. Giving them stickers or a treat or a toy. You can have them not drink before they go to sleep. Or if they do drink, wake them up at, say, 12 to help them out with that. If a child is much older, at an age where they should, and you've already ruled out anything else, there's also a little bit of laziness. It takes a lot to go out, and they might be scared of the dark. Going to the washroom alone can be really, really frightening. So you want to also take a look and rule those out. Night terrors. Night terrors are a little bit different. They're often linked to scary situations, separation anxiety. So they're waking up and you want to soothe them. And if it is something that they usually do go away, there's a certain period of time around, this one I didn't actually look up, but I think it is like 7 to 10 or so that night terrors often happen. It doesn't mean that you can't have a 6-year-old that has a night terror. It can happen. But you also want to look at what's happening with them. Are they really scared? Are they really anxious during something that's happening in their life? Do they have separation anxiety, meaning they don't want to be without someone? Or is someone bothering them? They're intense dreams, and they usually do go away on their own. So it's not something that is exceptionally alarming. It doesn't mean that there's something abusive or horrible happening with them, but it might mean that they're not dealing with something exceptionally well in their own lives.
Are there also growing pains, perhaps, especially as they get older, or other physiological pain manifestations?
Yes, growing pains are exceptionally common. They usually go away on their own. So what you can do is increase the child's circulation, so you can carry them around a little bit to help the circulation go back into their legs, or just give them a little bit of medicine. I don't know what the different children's acetaminophen or ibuprofen is called in the States, but you can give them some Tempra or some children's Tylenol or whatever else it might be, just to help them relieve themselves of their pain and let them go to sleep as well. And again, just knowing that you were there and you heard them and you were able to be there. And then I'll say often, I'm going to leave for a little bit and I'm going to come back. But make sure if you say that, go back. And if they're asleep, great. Don't wake them up and say, I'm back, but just, a soothing voice and, I'm here. Touch them very gently not to wake them up and let them continue sleeping.
Now, I want to just flip gears for a second and talk a bit about the parents, because this is a lot of, well, you said yourself earlier on, it's a lot of work to do this. What are some methods that you can do to handle your own anxiety or stress or lack of sleep while going through all this?
Well, you want to make sure that if you can't sleep, you're no good to anyone else. So you could do something which is one parent sleeps during the night, one person sleeps during the day, which is good. If you're a breastfeeding mom, you can choose to pump. Again, you want to wait a little bit. So you say, okay, for 3 weeks, I'm not going to sleep very well, but you want to make sure that the child has a good latch. So you want them to get used to the nipple, because what happens often, could happen, is that they might get used to the bottle, which is different than a actual, woman's nipple. And so then they won't latch as well. But after that period of time, you can choose to say, listen, I'm going to get up for this feeding and I will breastfeed. And then for the next feeding, I've pumped, and then we're going to bottle feed once. And then you get a full feeding. Because what happens if your child is feeding every, say, 2 hours, which some children will want. And again, this is a personal choice, but I believe in feeding when the child is hungry, not, forcing them at a certain time schedule. People have different opinions on that, and whatever works for you is fine. But I think that we should teach the child to listen to their own body systems. My idea on that. So then the next feeding would be your partner's chance to feed, and it would be through a bottle, and also gives your partner the chance to bond with the child, which is really nice. And then you get a time to sleep through, hopefully a couple of sleep cycles, and then you get up for the next feeding. And ask for help.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're single, right? Like, 'cause some people may not have a partner to help them.
Exactly. If you need it, ask for help. If you have family members that will help you, please let them know. A neighbor, just getting one full, 3-4 hours of sleep makes a huge difference. And people love to carry and care for little babies. So you're actually doing them a favor as well.
And you can also, we've done episodes on breathing and on self-care. So, I mean, it's probably a good idea to check back on those as well.
Exactly. And it's so important. You're important. You cannot give up yourself for your child, because then the child has no one.
Yeah, well, it's your favorite saying, right? You put the mask on yourself before you put the mask on your child.
Yes, exactly. If you're not there for them and you're not feeling healthy and well, and you're stressed and angry and frustrated, yes, your little baby is going to know that, and it's going to start to slowly impart that on themselves. So you want to teach them some good habits of self-care, of taking care of yourself, of that, mommy is important, and so is daddy, and so are you. You cannot sacrifice one family member for the other.
All right, excellent, Georgia. So is there any homework for this episode?
If you have a small child, I would say definitely take a look at the book. I think that it is a worthwhile read, and it gets rid of that feeling of guilt. It gives many different manners of dealing with it. Some fabulous tools on what to look for. How do you know if your child is tired? How do you know how it's feeling? And also to listen to yourself as well.
And the name of the book again, sorry?
It is Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child.
Nice. And if they have questions, concerns, comments, or recriminations, how can they get in touch with us?
You can contact me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPB, or you can email me.
Podcast at zenandtech.tv.
Thank you.
Awesome. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find both of us at Zen and Tech. You can email us at the aforementioned podcast at Zen and Tech, or just leave a comment on the show when it goes live on the site. You can find all of our shows at mobilenations.com/shows. And once again, Georgia, I think this is such an important series, and I want to thank you for taking the time to share it with us.
It's wonderful. It's something I feel so passionate about. I'm so happy. I love getting feedback, pros and cons, differences of opinions. It will help me. It'll help the clients that I work with. So please, if you do not share my views and have a different idea of it, great. And I also love to do talks and presentations on this. So if you want me to head down to your area at some point in time, let us know. We would love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Georgia. Thank you very much, chat room. Thank you very much, everybody.